Okay. Excellent, excellent. Awesome. So we're going to go and welcome now to Therapy in the era of global crisis, evolving to meet the needs of a rapidly changing society. Okay. Awesome. Great to have you all here. And let's see, where are people? Wow, we got people from all over here. Danielle's from OKC. You're going to have to write that out. I'm assuming it's Oklahoma, Texas, New Jersey, Minnesota, San Diego, Lompoc, Seattle, Cincinnati, San Diego again, Oregon, North Dakota, Nevada, Inland Empire, Maya, California. Oh, Maya's calling in from California. That's her name. Houston, Philippines, awesome, welcome. Missouri, Colorado, Oregon, LA. I'm pretty close to LA, I have to say. Ontario, Canada, welcome. Yosemite, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm going up there for Thanksgiving. Arizona, Riverside, New Mexico, Alabama, Camarillo. Okay, now we're getting really close. Patrick, you can almost come over and join me here live. San Francisco, Victorville, Valerie, California, Glenview, Monterey, Duluth, Minnesota, LMFT from LA, woohoo! Colorado, San Diego, a lot of San Diego, Houston, Edmonton, Alberta, love it. Philippines, France, love it. Minnesota, LA, Massachusetts. Well, we have Ethiopia, love it. Colorado Springs, Georgia, South Africa, woohoo, India, love it. Los Angeles, Miami. Welcome, everyone. It is so awesome to have you here. And I am so excited to be here with you today and talk about just doing therapy in the world today, because boy, it has certainly become a complex thing, I would have to say. So I'm going to go ahead and get into presentation mode. Awesome. So today we are doing a live webinar, and you can get a free CE through the online course, and we'll tell you how to do that at the end. But as we're doing this live presentation, please put your questions for me in the Q&A and put your chats with each other in the chat. And hopefully at the end, I got a lot to cover, but I hope to at least hit some of the questions at the end of the workshop. So awesome. You do not have, there's a question, do you have to attend live to get the CEUs? No, you don't. You can see a recording and you'll get that at the end. You'll have a month to collect your CE certificate. So you get 30 days to collect the certificate. Awesome. Okay. I've got a lot to cover today. We got a lot to get through. So I am going to go ahead and get started. Awesome. Awesome. It is a beautiful Sunday morning. Thank you so much. For those of us on the West Coast here, it is on Pacific time. It is a beautiful morning. Okay, so let's go ahead here. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to start actually by just looking at some of the legacy that we have inherited here in the as mental health professionals, and just how our field started and how that relates to how we're dealing with the world as it is today. Because this profession's been around now for over 150 years. And so I just think even looking at how we started is a good place to begin. We're going to be looking at some of the global crises and how they're affecting, there is a global mental health crisis going on, and looking at some of the variables and factors related to that. I'm not going to solve all those today, but we will at least name them, and we will consider how those are impacting us. And then we're going to look at what is happening in the mental health field itself, because we are definitely, whether you're aware of it or not, we are definitely a field in significant crisis. And it's really alarming, especially to those of us who've been around for 30 years, looking at what is going on and what's happening within the field, how our workforce is struggling and leaving, and the disparities we are dealing with. So we'll look at also how not only is the do we have many different forms of global crises and social crises in our world, but our own profession is experiencing a lot of crisis. And then we're going to look at some of the challenges that we are experiencing, as well as some of the solutions, and including looking at the unifying framework that I have been developing over the years. And so in this workshop, we will be looking at some of the key elements, and I'm going to challenge you to find 2 of them to take home and use in your own practice wherever you are around the world. So I'm hoping you will leave that with that today. And then finally, at the end of the presentation, for those of you who are interested, I will be sharing a little bit more about learning how to use a more unifying framework to address global challenges and working in today's very, very complex mental health, the context in which we are working in. Let's go. Okay. So learning objectives for continuing education credits. The first is, I hope you are going to be able to identify at least 2 ways that global crises are changing and shifting the needs and affecting our own clients. Being able to describe at least 2 ways the profession is in crisis due to a lot of these larger societal changes. And then finally, I'm hoping you can walk away with 2 different ways that you can use key principles from the unifying frameworks to streamline your practice so that you are more responsive to just contemporary practice context and the many, many challenges that we are all experiencing around the globe. And it's so wonderful to have so many people from around the globe here today. So I want to begin by talking about our legacy. This is a picture of Freud's living room. And in the very, very beginning, when there was the first inkling or thought of the talking cure, that a doctor, in this case, they were doctors, can sit down, talk to someone and affect change and affect their mental health, the talking cure. And Freud really is, widely recognized as the grandfather of all of this. It all began in his living room. And in the beginning, Freud, Adler, and Jung, would either gather at Freud's house. It's actually where it began, in his house. Later, they'd meet in cafes around Vienna. You can go to Vienna and tour these cafes with what they called the Psychoanalytic Wednesday Society. They met on Wednesday nights. It's now the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society. But what happened here in this living room is when Adler and Jung started having different ideas than Freud, I think the way the history's been told, I wasn't in the living room, so I can't tell you how it went down, but the history is that Freud refused to allow them to be part of this society, be part of his group, to be, part of his little clique. And that decision at the beginning of our field's history, I think is actually the source of much of our misery today and our source of burnout and exhaustion and imposter syndrome. Because imagine if in this living room, Freud and Jung and Adler could have sat down and said, oh, this is how, I want to conceptualize the interior world, right? And Jung's like, well, look at these, archetypal patterns, across cultures, and brought that piece in. And Adler's like, and look at all these practical ways working in the community, looking at, things. What if it was and rather than or? Like, imagine if when you sat down, and if we had a history where it was always both and, yes, we can use it all. Our job's really hard. Yes, let's use all the good ideas out there. Instead we have, when you sit down, you read that textbook in the beginning of your graduate program, right? Or you go through whatever, 8, 10, 12 different theories, and it's this one or that one, or that one, or that one. And you're like, oh my God, which one do I choose? I mean, imagine if you sat down, you opened up your theory textbook from the very beginning of being in this field, and you're like, so these are the ideas from psychodynamic theories. And now look at what, Jung and Adler and humanists and cognitive behavioral and postmodern and family therapies. What if it was and? And as you open that textbook, you could say, wow, I have all these great tools and I get to use them all. And instead, somehow, we have stayed in this legacy of conflict and divisiveness that I think really makes it hard to do psychotherapy and professional counseling in this era of global crisis, because it's or. And I'm telling you, those of us, many of us have helped respond to natural disasters in recent weeks all around the globe. It's been catastrophic, mass shootings. Those of us in the United States, we end up doing therapy around a lot of that. Just so many of these crises. And if you have worked in any of those types of situations, you want all the tools that you have available to respond in such difficult circumstances. And that is why this either or conflict, this legacy that we have inherited, I think we need to stand up and really look at that and question it, because is it serving us at this time in history? Because if you look at this, we have the Freud-Adler-Jung, division, fragmentation began there, but then look at where we're at now, this theoretical division between all of these theories. And how often do you hear proponents of the different schools insulting one another? It's really not very professional, in my opinion. And then we see the same pattern replicated at the professional level, where different professionals are very quick to criticize whole other classes of professions. And I have been involved, in helping out in the Maui recovery efforts. And I will tell you, they are the role model for professionals working together, the psychologists, the social workers, the MFTs, the professional counselors. They are all working together side by side with other professional groups and the educators and the first responders, and this and where we are a team working together. And that attitude is going to be critical as we try to respond to what is going on in the world today. Because I don't believe this complexity and divisiveness can serve us with what we have to do as mental health professionals in today's societies. So let's look at some of these global and professional crises that we are all experiencing, no matter where you are. So let's start off with the WHO statistic that there has been a 13% increase in mental health issues over the past decade. So you can't even just blame all of this on the pandemic. It started before the pandemic. The pandemic certainly has not helped. We have dramatic increases in suicide and overdoses, especially in places like the United States. It is overwhelming. The need for mental health services has just really skyrocketed around the globe. Then you have the global pandemic, where we have millions of people, 3 million people have passed, and there are tens and hundreds of millions of people, children, family, spouses, grieving their loved ones. This is a scale of grief and loss that is traumatic. And then on top of that, we have all the long-term impacts of lockdown, especially for the youth who were, not able to attend school, who had their just normal development disrupted. Children who were born during the pandemic have delays already just in terms of recognizing faces. We have a lot of long-term work to do here with the impact of that pandemic on so many different levels. Then we have climate change. I mean, the numerous unprecedented natural disasters, they're mind-boggling as we look at what has happened around the world just in the last month between Maui and Libya and Florida and the Northeast, and we have the Canadian wildfires and Morocco. There is just, you can't even keep track of it. It is just really incredible. And anyone who is here listening, who has been touched by one of these disasters, your own community, your own family, your loved ones, your clients, it is a totally different experience to be doing trauma work when you were in the middle of the trauma that your clients were going through. It is such a different way to do this work, a whole new set of challenges, both personally, professionally, legally, ethically. I mean, when my community has experienced both traumatic wildfires as well as mass shootings, And it's really interesting to see just the challenge when everyone's coming in your door is talking about the same trauma, even just trying to keep confidentiality straight, like, who did you know who died? And like, okay. And then you're processing it all, you're feeling it all yourself, as they're talking. It is a very different challenge to do this work in those type of contexts. Then we have the political and social crises. There is war and polarized politics around the globe. Sometimes I think it's just here in the United States, and you read the news, you're like, okay, it's everywhere. This polarization where whole societies are getting torn apart. And as many of us know, their families are getting polarized. And the number one most robust predictor of wellness, lifelong wellness, is a sense of community. And our communities are getting ripped apart in multiple levels. And the psychological toll is tremendous. And we are in a field that is kind of charged with trying to make a difference here in this polarization that we easily get pulled into as well. We have the increase of hate crimes, and those are just gut-wrenching situations, in terms of sitting down with families who are experiencing increased amount of hate, sometimes for groups. Like in the United States, there are groups that are just seeing skyrocketing levels of hate crimes that they didn't know in their lifetime, and I'm working with people in their 20s and 30s. It's like, I never thought I would experience this in the United States. What's going on? Very difficult emotions and situations to process with no clear roadmap for how to handle all of that. And finally, we have the financial crises with housing, cost of living. We're experiencing it. Our clients are experiencing it. Our communities, our governments are trying to deal with it, right? It's a very divisive issue yet again, but it's a very real issue, and it's a very gut-wrenching issue to be dealing with all of these crises that are coming in through our doors. It is not a normal time to be doing this work. I've been doing it for 30 years, and I can tell you over the last 5 to 10 years, what has been going on in our societies is very different, and its effect psychologically, relationally, to the entire fabric of communities and nations is very different. And it makes our job much more challenging. So now let's look at what's happening to our own profession. In the United States, and I think around the globe, there is a workforce shortage. In the US alone, it is estimated we are short 6,000 or 6,600, let's call it, mental health care workers in 2022 alone. So I run a very large master's degree program. We produce, about 52 people a year, and we're one of the largest master's programs. That's a huge increase. That's hundreds of more programs we need to actually staff the United States, which has some of the highest numbers of mental health workers, let alone around the globe, that has far worse statistics in terms of needing a workforce. There's just not enough of us. And then this may tell you why. Various different surveys always estimate, between 23 to 40% of the mental health workers will say that they are, chronically anxious. 20 to 30% are chronically depressed or have significant depression symptoms. That is a very, very stressed out workforce, especially for one that needs their personal resilience to be able to build that connection, to actually do their work well. To be this stressed out is very dangerous for us, which explains the next statistic we have, that 37% of people surveyed plan to leave the field, to retire in the next 5 years. So we almost have 40% of this, we already have a workforce shortage. And when asked, 40% of us say we plan to leave the field, not just our jobs, the field. And that is going to be devastating for our societies. And the why? They are burned out because they have too many clients. It was interesting, this survey also said that client issues are increasingly severe. So back in the good old days, right? You could come in and your clients kind of had like one issue, maybe one diagnosis. It was kind of like not too severe. And we're seeing this at the university level. I mean, I have never, until the pandemic, had to tell field sites, you can't give my clients 5 out of 10 of their cases can't be suicidal for first-year clinician. It's too much. It's too much for a licensed person to be having half of 50% of your caseload being suicidal, self-harming, just that level of constant crisis, having to monitor that much severe crisis. I was talking to a colleague recently, and it's just how it weighs on your heart to hear these stories. It is overwhelming. And so, we are burning out because not only are our caseloads heavier, but what we're hearing is heavier. And the, increase in trauma, and for all those reasons of global crisis, it's burning us out. It is too much to bear. And then on top of it, we, very often are experiencing low pay. And so there are a lot of people deciding to not stay. And that is going to be devastating for our field, because for those who remain, it makes your job that much harder. It's a very critical time for our field, I would say. And then on top of all of this, the latest thing, and I've been doing some research in this area, is the disparities in licensing exam rates based on age, ethno-racial identity, as well as what's linked in there is the social class issue. So I'm going to just take a moment, because I know a lot of folks are interested in this, but this is when we have these barriers to entering the workforce, right? And we're entering the field when we're desperate. We need, people who are in the field. We need people who are not burned out in the field. And our licensing processes are just ridiculous hurdles in many cases, that it's contributing to the burnout and people wanting to leave the field. And I've heard from numerous people who just want to give up because our licensing process is so messed up. So let's take a quick look at this. So we have, I have data from, there are 2 organizations, and I know all the mental health organizations are looking at this right now. But right now, NASW for social workers in the United States, they published their data first. And then recently, my colleague, Kevin Linus, who is the real researcher, he's the quantitative researcher behind it all. I'm the person helping to, with other parts of the design study. Here's what we're seeing. And so we have, and I know that social work, I know that the licensing boards in MFT are working on this, and I believe psychology is working on this. So if you look at these 2 studies, you see very disturbing trends. Let's start with age. Look at the pass rates are, almost 90% for both of them. You go to people in their 30s who are not, experiencing age-related cognitive decline, you start seeing those numbers go down. Look at the 40s, again, very little, little of this can be explained by age-related decline. And then certainly 50 plus, we're seeing a huge difference in pass rates. And, I think the best explanation for that set of data is the phase of life. So when you're in your 20s, you can set aside 100 plus hours to study for these exams. And because, you typically don't have children, a major job, a partner, a house, all of that you need to be juggling. But as people's lives get more complex, they just can't sit down and, block out the 100 or more hours you need to focus and study on these exams. So that's a huge problem. Then you look at the data by ethno-racial identity. And you can also see here a very concerning trend with, white and multiracial folks passing at a much higher rate compared to Black. And you see the very similar parallel pass rates, by ethno-racial identity groups, which is very, very concerning. One of the more interesting parts of this data is that typically on tests, like in the United States, we have things like college entrance tests, which are this SAT and the GRE. Typically, Asian Americans do better. And you'll notice here, they do statistically worse here compared to white multiracial. So something is going on where these tests don't even correlate with our typical SAT GRE scores. So we have made this profession very hard to enter for many, many people. And if we look at a lot of people are, have a lot of questions about the ethno-racial data. What's very interesting, what we think is the leading explanation out there actually, though, is that there's a another factor of class dynamics. And what they found is that working class, in the study that this hypothesis is built upon, looked at how working class Black families talk in very practical ways, where middle class white families, this was a linguistic comparison study, they talked about facts for facts' sakes. There was this disembodied information seeking questions. And the hypothesis is that these licensing exams that have like whatever 200 or at least 100 hypothetical scenarios that the candidates have to answer. If you come from a family where your parents didn't talk about in disembodied information, using disembodied information seeking questions, throwing around facts for facts' sakes, talking about all these hypotheticals, that exam is just going to be a lot harder for you to pass. And that is in my Laugh Your Way to Licensure course, we talk a lot about that. And that's what we've been working on. So where are we? We are a fragmented profession where no one's using all the information. That's just not how we've set it up. It's you do this or that or this or that. We have this incredible global mental health crisis, with many of us being burned out ourselves, and we have this field that is in crisis. Most of us are stressed out, and the licensing roadblocks are just making it very hard to even enter the field. There's a lot of crisis going on. And so if we take all this together and we synthesize it, our challenges are around fragmentation, burnout. There's a greater need for us, and we really need to be able to work and serve both diverse clients as well as diverse professionals, right? And so as we step back and we look at all of this, especially those of us who have been working in these areas, unifying, simplifying, finding the most effective and efficient ways, and as well as looking at very practical ways to train, to qualify folks to enter this field, we need to simplify. We need to simplify in this field. And so I would say as the world gets more complex, we need to figure out how to do what we do more simply and more easily. One of the things I will point to is when you end up responding to especially something like a natural disaster or a mass shooting or something along those lines, you'll find that what you learned in grad school doesn't usually serve you very well. I was just really blown away with how well the Hawaiian mental health professions, responded, but one of the first things they did was to do a workshop, on psychological first aid to train everyone to be able to respond in this moment. And I'm an educator, we need to do a much better job of ensuring that every mental health professional is ready for such a situation, because as we can see over the past month, it can happen anywhere on the globe at any time, and we need to be ready. And we need to be thinking differently about how we train and how we do this work. And running off and having to learn a whole new theory and approach because of some kind of societal event, natural disaster, what might be going on, it's a lot to ask of this burned out workforce, this workforce that's already tired and exhausted. Uh-oh, somehow we got off here. Here we go. Sorry, you're going to see a quick review. There we go. So this is where I think things like a unifying framework can come in. And a unifying framework just synthesizes everything into a simple, neat, single coherent package that you can use with any client in any situation in any context. And these are becoming very popular across multiple disciplines. And I really believe mental health is ready for that at this time in history. Just with the knowledge explosion happening in every field, unifying frameworks are becoming very standard, and mental health is ready for theirs. And so my research in the recent decade, I guess, has been trying to streamline the entire knowledge base of the field into, taking 50 theories into a simple framework. Now, a framework doesn't explain, a framework is just a system for doing. It just tells you how to do this work well, whether you are helping your community after a natural disaster, whether you're helping, a family, an individual, a couple, a child, using the same basic framework, no matter what is going on in front of you. And this framework must contain the evidence base. It's evidence informed. And that means you're using the evidence to serve your client, guide your practice, guide your treatment planning. It doesn't necessarily mean you're using an evidence-based treatment, because unfortunately, evidence-based treatments are really great in a lot of ways because they really help us understand what works for a specific population. But with all of our clients coming to us with multiple different problems, these evidence-based treatment manuals become more difficult to use when your client has OCD, they've got a natural disaster trauma, they're grieving. How do you put those together, right? We need a framework that even takes those evidence-based manualized treatments and synthesizes them into a single framework so that you're not feeling like you're jumping all over the place and doing this mental gymnastics and trying to respond to the type of issues our clients are bringing to us. And the third piece is being able to integrate the impact of societal and cultural dynamics into our conceptualizations. For most theoretical approaches and most approaches in general, the societal cultural dynamics are like this add-on you kind of have to do at the end. That's, again, it's stressful for the clinician to have to think, oh yeah, now I got to go think about the cultural issues, and I'm going to jump in to another model, another this to pull that in. We have to synthesize that so that it's one framework. We're using one simple, clear system for doing across all of our clients that responds to all of the needs in the 21st century. And it has to be practical. We need to remove the jargon. We can see what jargon is doing on our licensing exams. It has to be hands-on and practical. When I teach my Therapy That Works Unifying Framework class, I have so many people going, oh my God, this is what I thought I was going to learn in grad school. And I create I do write those textbooks. I've created the curriculum. And we have a totally practical skill we're supposed to be teaching, but most of the time we teach it, whether it's in graduate school or whether it's in our continuing education, it is just someone talking at you, kind of like I'm doing right now. And the whole concept of hands-on skill learning we've really lost touch with that. I actually think there was more of that when I came into the field 30 years ago than we do today. But we need to get back to teaching very practical, real-world skills in how we train, and letting go of the jargon. The jargon is fun for those of us who are theoreticians, but in today's world, we need to simplify, streamline, and have the courage to call the same basic principle across different theories the same thing. It doesn't really help to call a unique outcome, in narrative therapy is functionally for the person in the room the same thing as a solution-focused exception, but learning this clunky language just slows it all down. It stresses us out. It's burning us out. We have to become much more streamlined and synthesized in how we do this. And for me, at least, I use the guiding principle, do what works. And I think many of us, we get trained, we spend a lot of time and money getting trained in certain theories, they resonate with us, it almost becomes like a religion, and we get blinded sometimes by our theories rather than looking at our client, the person in front of us. Is what we're doing helping them? Is it working? If not, it's important to have the courage to say, let's do something different. Let's figure out what needs to be done to help you. And I think that is truly one of the most important things to get, as a mental health professional, to get to a point where I'm going to let go of my hypotheses, my favorite pet theories, what worked for me, what I believe in. And if all of that isn't working for the person sitting in front of me, it actually does take a lot of courage to say, okay, so what else do I need to be thinking about, looking at? What am I missing so that I can help this person? Because I don't think there's any person on this planet who cannot be helped. And I just keep at it until I figure out what works for this person who's sitting in front of me. And that attitude really is what has built this framework. So, responding to global crisis, the 6 elements of the Therapy That Works framework. So here's what I want to do right now. So I'm going to invite you, I'm going to walk through the 6 major elements of the unifying framework. And my hope is that you will find two of these that resonate for you, that you can take these concepts and use them in your daily work, wherever you are on the globe, whatever context you work in, private practice, agency, in home, whatever you're doing on the globe. I'm hoping you can find at least two of these to take home and integrate or inspire you in what you are doing in your own work. So let's start with the self as a clinician. Anyone who's flown a plane, flown in a plane, not a plane, flown in a plane, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. In this, so when I created this framework, and I've been training for 30 years, I really wanted to talk about the importance of how you live your life. And so we talk about self-care, and self-care has become almost a meaningless term. It kind of means go home and meditate, or I don't know, get a manicure, pedicure. Sorry for those of you who may not know that phrase. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but it is not systematic. It is not systematized. And it is historically very ignored in our theories. You look at, any of our theories, and some of them do talk about self of the clinician, use the self of the clinician in session, but they don't tell you how to live your life outside a session, or give you tips for how to do this work and not get burned out. Especially a lot of what we're doing right now, which is gut wrenching through the pandemic, helping people recover from natural disasters, mass shootings, levels of trauma the planet hasn't seen in a long time, let's just say. But there's no really practical guidance or even authentic discussion. So when I begin teaching people the unifying framework, this is the piece. A lot of people will say, I wasn't really excited about this part, but it was the most important part. And it's really because we have authentic discussions about what it's really like when you take off the mask, what it's like to do this work as a human. So especially anyone listening who is a supervisor, these conversations are so important to have, to talk about your own personal struggles, what it is like, when you were doing therapy in today's world, with listening to the tragic stories that we hear sometimes hour after hour, and how difficult it really can be. And I really want everyone listening, to really challenge yourself to create a treatment plan for happiness for yourself. And, that's one of the first things I do when I teach people the unifying framework is, let's get a treatment plan for you and your life. And we do it 360. We do it around mental health. We do it around your relationships, your physical life. Are you taking care of your bodies? We sit all day. That is not good for the human body. What are you doing to take care of your body? We look at financially. Are you taking care, are you taking care of yourself financially? And what does that look like? What does that mean? Looking at where are you going with your career? Are you in the right place? And making sure that you have fun and adventure in your life. So this holistically living 360, having, we need to have a robust plan for living so that we don't burn ourselves out, because over half of us are burned out and exhausted. And so it is so important that we taking care of ourselves seriously. And I really encourage those of you who are clinic directors or supervisors or professors to find practical, real world, like, this is how I live my day, so I don't burn myself out conversations. They have been eye-opening for my students. And like I said, when people are done with my therapy that works, masterclass, where we spend 45 hours learning this, doing a deep dive in this, most of them say this is the most valuable part of the course, either because, some people save their relationships, other people, get their health back on track, other people, get their finances, together finally, and it's so important that we take care of ourselves. And it is very strange that this is something that we don't do, I think, very well in the field. And I think there is this idea that we need to be like perfect all the time because we're the helpers, right? And that is what is burning us out and making us sick. And we need to have a much more robust way to do it. And I think the most interesting thing is, and you see this in the medical field too, like the helpers don't like to help themselves. And we need to figure out how to break through that tendency that helpers, both, medical fields and mental health fields, we don't take care of us. We're not real with ourselves enough. And we need to have these authentic discussions. I've had so many people say how refreshing and helpful it is to hear about, how I'm struggling in various ways as well. So that was number one. Number two, collaborative connecting. So I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this in any way, because I start all my students out learning empathy, but I will tell you, in this era of global crisis, the level of trauma that we are witnessing routinely, empathy is just not enough. And the empathy that most mental health fields start out teaching us how to use, we have to have it. It is step one. We need it. We are not going to lose that empathy piece. But when you're talking about working with clients experiencing social injustice, racism, heterosexism, and especially how painful we have seen in recent years, I guess I'm talking the United States at least, but I think we see it around the globe as well. Just reflecting that must have been very difficult is a slap in the face. And so a lot of these initial ways of connecting that we have learned, the standard ways of doing it, we need to level those up, because it's just not enough. You're sitting with someone who has lost their family, lost their home, totally financially destitute, nowhere to live, saying that must be really hard, is a slap in the face. And so we do need to find ways to respond to much more complex situations. And I will tell you, empathy is just the beginning. It is like that's like semester one, and that I expect that to be, and then moving on in my grad program, or I want people to be able to move on from empathy to really learn what I call collaborative connecting, because what our clients are coming in with, traditional forms of connecting, are insufficient. And the way I teach it in my unifying framework, where I got to teach the way I want to, is, it's more from the postmodern sense of we've got to enter our client's lived experience. We've got to be able to step out of our own biases, our own frameworks of life. And the way I describe it is I use the metaphor of a holodeck. A holodeck comes from an old version of the Star Trek movies, where there is this room that the user can program, and they create everything in that room and the logic by which it works. Okay, so in this world, rivers can move through the air, clouds can be on the ground, lions can be grazers, and as gazelles can be apex predators. You don't know, and you're totally blindfolded when you enter their world. And so there is this humility. We talk about cultural humility. I mean, humility in all ways, curious and humble. And you're blindfolded, and your client is going to give you a tour of the world, the way they experience it, and how they make sense, how they interpret it. And when you enter a client's world this way, it is totally transforming. I've had some of my students who've learned, and usually the people who are newer in their career, this is the piece where they come in and they learn how to enter their client's lived reality, and they skyrocket beyond all of their peers. They come back and they're like, oh my God, my supervisor said I had the highest retention rate in the whole agency, even higher than the licensed people. What are you doing? I've had folks where when they go and they do their demonstrations in front of their classmates at the university, they're like, oh my God, you're incredible. How did you learn to do therapy? And it's because they evolved from doing the basic empathy skills to learning how to enter their clients' learned reality, where you learn to suspend your biases and your interpretation. We can never do it 100%, but we can certainly get better and better and better at doing it. And you really make sense of what it is like as your client is navigating this world that they're in and how they're experiencing it. And especially when you look at things like a natural disaster, mass shootings, or coming out of the pandemic, all of these experiences, being able to enter that from a place of total curiosity and humility. How are you experiencing your experience of this? Sometimes we're all going through it. What is yours like? Your experience like? How are you making sense of this? Is oftentimes the most respectful way to engage people going through it's unthinkable tragedy. Unthinkable tragedy. And that is where simple reflections of that must be difficult is just not enough. Third, case conceptualization. So I think one of the most important things, this has always been the case. This is I spent most of my life. If you've read my books, you know, like case conceptualization. It's where the magic is. It's how you get really good at this. It's how you get fast. And I think the key really is to learn how to conceptualize with 50 theories at once, especially in this complex world we're living in. And certainly the folks who go through my therapy that works, when they learn the unifying framework, I will tell you this part of the case conceptual, this part of the framework is everyone's favorite. And they think what's most transformative in terms of making them a better clinician. And so I'm going to give you this right now. Here we go. So over the years, I've been studying 50 different theories as I write my textbooks, and I've kind of condensed them into this framework I've developed. And it is simultaneously both an assessment and an intervention. And this is one assessment conceptualization that you can use with individuals, couples, and families, whether you're talking about intrapsychic, symptoms or interpersonal symptoms like conflict. And this is really the missing piece for most clinicians. And so we start at the bottom behaviorally, looking at, what would a video camera see? What are the behavior interactions sequences? And that's always looking at when the symptoms at its least severe. How does tension rise? When is it at its worst? And how does it go back to some kind of less severe state? With a panic attack, that you go from no panic to total panic and back to no panic. With depression, you're going to go through, the least amount of depressive symptoms in the day or the week, how things get worse, what they're like at their worst, and then how things kind of go back to a little bit better. So it can ebb and flow, but you track that whole sequence, and that's so key that we track the whole sequence, the ebb and flow of the symptoms. The symptom at its worst is for the psychiatrist to prescribe their medication. But for those of us who didn't make real everyday life changes for people, it's the ebb and flow of the symptom. You figure out where to intervene, where do you have your leverage points, and then looking at complementary patterns. And so this is where, there's a pursuer and a distancer, right? There's confidence, and then there's feeling like you're an imposter. And so you can have these polarities. And this is fascinating. And someday I will write a book on this. And I'm tracking this from psychodynamic all the way through to postmodern. These most theories have, and this is where most of the jargon comes in, is looking at these complementary patterns, which you can see on top of that. And the next piece of this framework is looking at what's going on emotionally, looking at the primary or attachment emotions, the emotions around feeling emotionally safe and secure. That is at the core of what triggers our stress response. And then there's secondary emotions, the anger, the frustration, the sadness, the more readily expressed. And so we look at how that maps on and how that ebbs and flows on top of the behavioral level. The fourth level is looking at cognitions. So you have both individual thoughts as well as identity narratives, family of origin narratives, our stories about who we are, because those take the form of you string a whole bunch of thoughts together, you get your identity, right? So all those beliefs, you string them together, you get your identity. And often those are informed by our family of origin. So the fourth level you look at is the cognitive, and it's got, again, two parts. And then finally, there's the societal level. So looking at the dominant discourses around your social location, so your age, gender, ethno-racial identity, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability level, social class, right? All of these, nationality, all these different identities we have, and how that layers on top of our problems and our struggles that we're having. And then looking at what your society, whatever society your client is, whatever community they're in, what they're saying about people who have problems like yours, because those narratives are incredibly impactful on us. And so when you're assessing clients, you are looking at all of these four levels. Okay, yes, now you know my secret. There are actually 8, but no one can track 8. We got to keep it simple. So you look at these 4 basic levels. It's kind of like an accordion when you're going through it. And you assess across these levels. And when you do that, both you and the client have now put together all of these pieces and can see what is going on. You understand, you can identify the core dynamic, which of these levels is key for your client and their particular problem, and where to start your intervention. It is incredibly simple and yet effective and elegant. And when someone, when I'm supervising and someone comes to me and they're like, how do I use this theory with this problem? I at this point, it's very hard for me to go back and go, oh, you're just going to use that cognitive level. You're not going to touch on the other 4 levels. And I just think we're going to, in the near future, I think we're all ready for something that is just so much more simple and streamlined. And you can see here, I'm not going to go through total detail, but you can get a general sense by looking at the colors. So postmodern, social cultural, they hit on these top 3 levels very heavily. There's a little bit of the behavioral there. With systemic CBT, they pretty much do behavioral and cognitions. With the humanistic folks, of course, doing a lot of the primary. You see a lot of overlap, people reaching into that complementary pattern piece, because that is what makes it different. Interestingly enough, DBT is really the only major CBT approach that really focuses on complementarity, because it allows them to work with more complex cases. So you can see here, whatever theory you trained in, it gets part of the framework, but it doesn't get it all. And how much easier is it if you could do all 4 levels? And I'm telling you, once you get used to working in a synthesized framework with using all 4 levels all the time, even though you can draw from these theories, going back and being like forced to just use a couple levels really feels very restraining and a lot less helpful. So 4th piece is evidence-informed treatment planning. It is a tragedy that our field, we don't make evidence and research-based practices and information easily accessible to the average working clinician. Medicine does this 10 times better than we do. It's certainly an area we have a lot of work to do. And it is something I will someday get that piece out. I can only write so much at a time. But I do have this as the 4th part of my unifying framework course, where we go through, what does the research say works for certain diagnoses, and what do you do when what we say normally works doesn't work? Where does a clinician go from there, besides referring the client out to someone else? So the most important thing is knowing the psych evidence base, which is very difficult. And that includes several different dimensions. It's not just evidence-based treatments, or a small part of that. There is what we know, what highly effective clinicians do better, which really comes down to that collaborative connecting I just talked about. Knowing how to really build that relationship is what sets most of the highly effective clinicians apart from the rest. And then there's knowing what works for disorders, and when specific treatments are needed and when they're not. So for things like OCD and phobias, there's a limited number of approaches. Most of them are exposure therapy based that are going to work. So doing something that's cognitive based with OCD, as tempting as it may sound, and I've done it before I read the research, before I knew what to do, before the research was there, that's the natural thing our field teaches us to do, but we shouldn't be doing that. And then there are other things like depression, most forms of depression and anxiety. Depression has a lot of different ways to get depressed, and there are different forms of anxiety, but in most cases, general anxiety, generalized, types of forms of depression, most approaches are going to work for that. And so we need to be talking about this, labeling this, and learning this, along with the evidence-based treatments that also give us a lot of information about what works and what doesn't. And another thing, in my unifying framework course, what most people, one of the top things people really appreciate is, what do you do, right, when psychological treatment isn't working? And understanding that there are profound physiological correlates that most of us go on, and we are trained to just keep going on, keep trying something different, rather than really identify the physiological correlates. Because researchers estimate that 25% of the clients that we are seeing in mental health need to be getting a physiological treatment, not a psychotropic medication. I am talking dealing with food sensitivities, genetic gene mutations, different sorts of physiological disorders. Some researchers are saying that 20% of what we're seeing is ADHD and those sorts of things are actually a traumatic brain injury. 20% of commonly presented mental health issues have an underlying traumatic brain injury that goes undiagnosed. We don't even know that it's there, right? And so for these sorts of issues, psychotherapy is not is just going to be inefficient. And so what, folks who learn the unifying framework, knowing how to identify when to refer out for medical, identifying some of the possibilities, where to refer is very difficult. Every community is difficult. Usually the functional medicine doctors help a lot of this stuff, but that is a key thing to know who in your referral network you can send your clients to rule all of these things out. But, knowing how to treat these difficult to treat cases that might have a food sensitivity like gluten can actually cause, psychotic symptoms, ADHD symptoms, anxiety, and depressive-like symptoms, right? So you have these kids who are on medications not getting better. Oftentimes they need a full medical workup to see if there's some kind of underlying physiological issue. And also with the adults as well. I just thought with the ADHD, I have met many kids who really had a gluten issue rather than, sometimes it was bipolar, sometimes it was ADHD, totally wrong diagnosis, because no one went and did the deep dive on the physiological underpinnings. It can be the gut biome. We know there's so many things, or at least 20 different physiological correlates, and we need to know how to rule those out. I've had students in my course say that, oh my God, you just healed my child's, lifelong health issue. Oh, thank you so much. You've healed my own life. Help me figure it out. We need to know these things. This is so important. And it's unfortunate there isn't a profession for us to refer to routinely to know how to help our clients in this area. I hope that's an area in medicine that will soon be developed. The fifth piece, and this relates to the treatment planning one, is evidence-informed intervention. And so we need to know when to use specific interventions for like OCD and phobia versus when we can use virtually any intervention. When do you need to have the couple, working in doing couples therapy versus doing individual therapy with, two individuals who are in the same relationship, and what works and what doesn't. Because there really are ethical issues here in terms of, and I think clinicians with very good hearts who have just not been trained, because we do not make this information easy to access, have really unintentionally made things worse rather than better. And the classic example is with a couple, right? And understanding how to do individual therapy with someone who's complaining about their partner, that's a whole skill set, folks. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. And you want to, understand when to use what type of intervention. And similarly with OCD, it's the most extreme version where 95% of clients are going to need a exposure-based treatment, not a cognitive one, but 99% of what all of the rest of us are doing is cognitive based. And so, OCD, you should not be treating unless you know how to do exposure and you're willing to do it. Because I know some people just don't want to do it. It's very different. It's not as much fun, I think, as some of the others. But if you're going to see that client, you need to be willing to do what we know is very likely to the only thing we know is likely to work in that case. Continuing on here, the 4-level conceptualization of wellness. So I think, not having symptoms does not mean you are well, especially in mental health. And especially in this age of global crisis, we have to build resilience in our clients, all of our clients, because of where the world is today. And so there are 2 keys to this, building the strength. The first is having a roadmap for how to, when your client, replaces the symptom with a preferred interaction pattern, preferred set of behaviors, how do you solidify this? And this is where a lot of my students who go through the program, my unifying framework program, they're just blown away because we start doing the treatment because we work with simulated clients, and they're like, well, the client's doing great. What do I do now? And then we do spend another, whole long hour session that is profound. It is heart moving with tears of joy often, but knowing how to, we use that same 4-level assessment we just talked about, but we do it around the solution, looking at the behaviors, the emotions, the cognitions, their identity in particular, and the societal level. And you pull all that together and you solidify their identity around their strengths. And this is so important for clients who are marginalized. And the second key really is what I call the 5 pillars of wellness, setting our clients up with proper diet, sleep, exercise, healthy coping, and social connection. And I have had students who go through the unifying framework, and they're like, their clients like this the best. And we, obviously we're not assigning dietary, regimens. We can refer them out, to do that. But we talk about how do you set up your life for lifelong wellness. And there are some clinicians who use the framework, and these 5 pillars have been the heart and soul of their work, and their clients just love it. This is where they get them to take action and to move. But you should never let a client, I don't consider my clients done unless they have created a lifestyle that will keep them out of my office for years to come. And across the career spectrum, this unifying framework is very fascinating. It's not like another theory. I can't compare it to anything, because pre-practicum, it's like if you're new to the field, you get this framework, you can put everything you're learning into, and it makes it so much less stressful and easier to launch your career. The fascinating thing is I have people with 10, 20, 30 years experience learning the unifying framework. And it's like all this, they're like, oh my God, all of a sudden, everything I learned works together, that fits together. I can use everything I've learned at one time. And it is incredibly empowering. And that is when you begin to feel like a master clinician. So this framework works across the career spectrum, the learning spectrum. We're always learning in this field, to really get you to become a master at the art of psychotherapy and professional counseling. And that is really an amazing feeling. So where does this leave us? I'm hoping you're going to leave first and foremost with a new mindset of integrating the self of the clinician, taking care of yourself in really meaningful ways in this era of global and social and professional crisis, where we are all getting very burned out. And I'm hoping that you are seeing how unifying frameworks are really going to help us do our work faster, better, with a lot less stress, a lot less burnout, and a lot more confidence. And integrating into what we do a wellness focus for ourselves as well as our clients, as we enter a very challenging time around the globe in so many different angles of life. It's not just natural disasters or societal, political conflict or war, or a pandemic, where it's all of that at once. And so we need to learn to really cultivate wellness in ourselves and others as we move through this difficult time. So for those of you who want to get your CE certificate, you're going to log in to the therapythatworksinstitute.com login. There's a course there for you where you complete the quiz and the eval, and you will get your email sent to you. And now I want anyone who, if you are still excited about this unifying framework, I want to invite you to learn about how this new course, I'm opening a cohort. I open a cohort once or twice a year where I take you in a master class for 5 months and teach you how to do all of this. And if that excites you, because you really do learn to do 10 or more years worth of training in 5 months. And you spend about an hour or 2 a week, but it is transformational. And like I said, I have folks who haven't started seeing clients. I have folks who've been seeing clients for 30 years in this course, and it is transformational. And in the beginning, you get very, very confident. You really jettison up. And for those of you who are senior, if you want to feel like a master in what you do, you will get that. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to give someone. And again, I apparently hit the wrong thing because I'm presenting in Canva, and that is what Canva can do. Here we go. Shoot. There we go. Wow. Sorry, I don't know a faster way to navigate through these slides. But you do get to review everything, which is always a plus, right? Okay, here we go. The second is on using hands-on techniques. And so in this, my Therapy That Works level 1 framework, unifying framework course, I teach people how to do the work. And that is one of the most frequent comments, like, no one ever explained things so I could actually do them. Very, very empowering if you went to a grad program and you feel like you left and you didn't learn how to do the work, because we know that in everyday supervision that there's just no time for that anymore. The other piece, like I said, most people don't expect to like this module, but the first module is about you and your life and getting you to a better place. You get a whole life upgrade. We do a treatment plan for you around all the different areas of 360. How are you doing in all areas of your life? And this is a lifelong, you're encouraged to use it lifelong to create a solid program of ensuring that you don't burn yourself out, stress yourself out doing this work, and that you love the life that you are learning. Because I do think this is the most amazing career in the world. You get to, in this course, it's the only CE course I know of where you get to do simulated reality training with live supervision, live demonstration, and there's no one else doing this. And this is, everyone says this is their favorite part of the course, where they get to actually practice. I'm your supervisor, or you watch me sometimes. Sometimes I'm the therapist, sometimes the supervisor. Hold your hand, teach you exactly how to pause and rephrase and ask the client the same question over, take it in a new direction. And that live, this is just the best training there is. And everyone who graduates from the program says this is the most helpful part of the whole program, being able to sit and we basically do therapy together. And I am holding your hand through the whole thing. And so it is a 5-month training course. It is comprehensive. You get 45 hours of continuing education. 25 is pre-recorded, so you can do that when you're doing the laundry or driving or exercising. And then 20-hour is live interactive. And we schedule that as customized to whoever registers. We build the schedule around the folks who actually register. And so because you stayed with me to the end of this program, you get a special discount. So you can get over $300 off the course. There are tons of free bonuses. And just for today, the folks who enroll first today, first 5 people, I will give you a special bonus of a 30-minute private consultation with me. So if you're excited, you want to do this, go ahead and jump in. You go to the therapythatworks.com, Therapy That Works page, and you can get all the details. And the first 5 folks to register get a free consult with me on anything they need. And so I'm going to go ahead now and start taking questions. You can put those in the Q&A, but yes, handouts will be in the course. All of these will be in the course for you. Can I give an example of collaborative connecting? Absolutely. So when you're sitting down with a client and they are talking about their experience, I'll just pull one from Friday. One of my clients on Friday, she went on a bad date. So I'm going to just do an easy one. And she's told me about a lot of bad dates. And I have some hypotheses and theories about her bad dates, right? But what I'm going to do, even though I've worked with this person for a while, I'm going to put on my blindfold and I'm going to let her take my hand and walk me through what happened and explain what happened step by step. And so I'm curious, how did it start, and how did you get invited, and what did you feel like when where'd you go? How did you feel like when you walked in the door? And there is this asking these very non-assuming questions that, and not making leaps, of my own interpretation, not filling in, how I thought she felt or what I thought the other person might be thinking or doing, or what my quick snap judgment is. I'm curious, I'm letting it unfold and understanding and allowing her to correct my misinterpretations. And that's one of the most important parts. And I ask questions until it makes sense to me. And sometimes, even if you've been working with a client for years, there can be a unique situation. Like I have one client, I feel like I really get this person, right? But their child was graduating, going off to college. And it actually took me 3 sessions to truly understand what the pain was about, because I couldn't understand it. It had to do with how, it was like seeing their child experience joy is how they give themselves permission to feel joy. And it just took me a while to get there, but you stay until you make sense of it through their lens. And you discipline yourself to be patient like that. Do I use it? So Randy asked a great question. Do I use a specific assessment form? No, I don't. And I don't intentionally. I mean, I'll take that back. So when someone comes to see me as a client, I do have them fill out, some assessment forms like the DSM-5 cross-cutting symptom inventory to help me with my diagnosis, to help me, figure out what's going on. So sometimes I use a dyadic adjustment scale with couples. So sometimes, yes, I will use certain assessments. But when I'm going to conceptualize to intervene, because those other assessments can be helpful with diagnosis, but if I'm going to conceptualize to intervene, I use that collaborative connecting where I am in their holodeck, making sense of it, understanding it all. And I am connecting how their identity as a woman affects their, sense of safety in this relationship, and the behavior that they do when they're arguing with their partner, right? Or their identity as a Latina, a gay Latina, right? And how that may affect their thoughts and their identity and their emotions as they're arguing with their partner, or arguing with their parent, right? Putting all of that together, as we track that and we just do this kind of deep dive on what's actually going on. I actually, just ask the questions and the client, answers it. But these are things none of us think at all 8 of these levels when we're going through our lived own experience. And so like you're connecting all of these dots and your client's connecting all those dots. I tell the folks who go to the unifying framework, the truth is 80% of the time, all I need to do and all you need to do is do that 8-level assessment, asking not knowing, open-ended, curious questions, and your client connects the dots. And when they start connecting those dots, they know what to do. They're like, wow, I need to do blank. And so, I like to make my client, I give them little tasks to do, but they've usually created the tasks to do as we have unpacked what's going on. And so it really makes this job easy. And if your job isn't easy, I'm telling you, there are ways to make this job easy. And that is what folks oftentimes who go through this program, they're like, especially the ones who've been doing it for 20, 30 years, are like, oh my God, like this is so much easier. And of course, those who are just starting out, like they only know it to be easy. And it is, it starts out with just so much more joy and a lot less stress, anxiety, imposter syndrome. And so that's a great question. I don't use a form. We do it together. It is interactive because it's also, it's an assessment, but it's also an intervention. And as the client is hearing how all of these pieces fit together in their lives, because none of us think like this, they just, it's just bing, 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 bing. They can connect the dots and they are internally motivated. I don't have to motivate them. They cannot unsee it. The beautiful thing is, I say, once you do that 4-level assessment, you cannot unsee the connections. They cannot go home and argue the same way with their partner or their spouse. And they can't go and engage in whether it's substances or depression or anxiety, they cannot unsee it. And that is why it is so magical and so effective. Oh, yeah. Linda Rio. Hi, Linda. Oh my God, you're the one from Camarillo. Linda, yes, it is like, so yes, when you're training someone to, because I live in this weird polarity, bipolar world where I teach the unifying framework, where I synthesize everything into one framework. And then I run a licensing course, Laugh Your Way to Licensure for Family Therapists, where yes, we go back and we splinter it all out into the 16 to 20 different theories you need to learn for your licensing exam. And so, but this framework though, it can be used, and I've added a module for folks where it resonates to use this framework to see, oh, so CBT and family systems actually are hitting similar things, but they just do it in very, very different ways, right? And so, oh, and look, here are the humanist folks. They're kind of like in the middle of that pie, and they kind of take over that emotional thing, but it's still the same dynamic and the same reality that is happening at the cognitive and behavioral levels. So I use the framework to help people like map and see the similarities, because it's just going to be easier to memorize 16 to 20 different theories if you see how they all fit together in one big puzzle. And now we can go off on a tangent here, but I will just footnote it and say I actually use the Myers-Briggs, looking especially like in this case, the intuitive types versus the sensing types. The intuitive types, that's half the population. The framework is like super, super helpful. For the sensing type, it's helpful in a different way. So actually understanding how a person's mind works can be helpful. But yeah, I think it's totally ridiculous to learn 16 to 20 different theories, but that's what the exams are. So this framework can be used to help, see the similarities and the overlap, and then just memorize the jargon that goes with each theory. And there is a lot of jargon. You need to know the jargon to pass the licensing exams for now. I'm working on a paper to help change that in the near future, but for those who are in the pipeline, you're memorizing jargon. But I think the framework can really be helpful. Got a question here from Susie. As a student or pre-licensed graduate, how can we use an integrated unifying framework with our clients and still pass the exams that are very heavy? You're going to have to learn both, Susie. And like I just answered it, great questions. Yes, great minds think alike. I'm totally with you. I use that framework and then I put all the different theories into it, and that helps me feel less overwhelmed by it all. Like, okay, so solution focus calls it, an exception, narrative calls it a unique outcome, basically the same thing. But theoretically, they are different, and I can argue that because I'm a theoretician. But being able to like see that overlap helps a lot. And like CBT and systems, it's funny, they're like sworn enemies at times, it feels. Thank God for CBF, cognitive behavioral family, a couple of family therapists. But seeing how when the systemic people are looking at the interaction cycle and their interventions, are the behavioral versus cognitive level, they're working on similar levels, which is really interesting. I find that helps me memorize it all. Okay, so I have someone here who's a second-year student, not been exposed to this important conversation in regards to the gut biome issues. How do we get this information incorporated into our study program? I have a third year coming up and I want this exposure. Wow, I know. This is one of the most important pieces I give in my treatment planning phase. And I would say the guideline I typically give, if the client has had chronic symptoms for a year or more, and there's, trauma and certain other things, that, getting, and this is outside our scope of practice for most of us, because blood tests, medical tests need to be done typically. And so I will tell you finding a functional medicine person or someone who looks at what's going on in terms of food sensitivities, is the liver processing, is the gut biome, all of that stuff. There isn't even a single one place to refer people. It's often not covered necessarily fully by their insurance, especially the more specialist ones. So it's a huge gap in our practice in the field of health, not just mental health, but health. We need a new professional who does this. And, I live in Southern California, so I have more access. There are more doctors who do that around here, nurse practitioners who do it, chiropractors can do it. But, hooking up with someone in your community who, they're just like I just send them people, they know me, because so often I've had people where it's, gene mutation that affects the methylation, and they get on B vitamins and it cures like chronic anxiety. It's been amazing. The gut biome, gluten's food sensitivities, gluten, I had someone hospitalized and on disability. And once we got the gluten and the methylation, a couple other things, they were off of disability. It is profound. And then there's all the traumatic brain injury as well. So there is so much out there. One of the places I'm thinking about with the brain injury, that's Dan Amon's clinic. It is national in the United States. It's expensive. That's the problem. And so it's looking in your community, but it's a huge gap in the practice world out there. But we do have the research to say all this is going on. We need a new profession to handle that gap. Do you have any recommendations for self-paced or low barrier resources for reflecting on our own lives? I think for me, one of the most powerful things, the first thing I'll say is I'm always reading some book that it helps me at whatever area of my life I'm struggling with. Every night by my bed, 10 minutes, I read a book. I'm constantly reading. A lot of it is self-help and that, or spiritual. I do think having a spiritual practice, especially, dealing with what's been going on. I've been involved with Maui. I've done mass shooting in my own area. I think having a spiritual center, it does not have to be formal religion. It can be meditation, but some kind of spiritual practice is really helpful to do this work at this time in history, more essential than ever. So reading, mindfulness, meditation, keeping it small and simple, 5-10 minutes a day, because that's the only thing you're going to do every day. Do not do big, complex things. It doesn't work. It has to be small and it's little. And so that's the program. When we do our treatment plan in therapy that works, the treatment plan is 5 minutes a day of something that works towards your goal. And that is what people can stay consistent with. And it is amazing how fast that builds momentum and snowballs into tremendous life changes. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so someone's asking, is this course for students who've not started practicum? Absolutely. It is like a cheat sheet for entering this field. I've had people who haven't even started their grad program, they're applying, go through it. And it is just, you enter and you learn how to do the work. And folks go, yeah, I took all my university classes. I start practicum. I had no idea what to do. If I wasn't here and if we didn't do all this practical stuff, I would not know what to do when I start my practicum. And so I have people in my level 2 course who are just starting, who went through both levels before they went to go see clients, because I mean, I'm a grad program coordinator. I understand why we do what we do. We have all these regulations and, boxes we need to check. And the skills work is, you're entering, the problem is when you're entering the field right now, what you're entering into is so complex, you need a much higher skill set out of the gate. And that is where a lot of people supplement their grad program with this program, because you walk you're out of the gate, you're ready to go, and you're not crushed and overwhelmed. And even when you go into they didn't have evidence-based treatments. They didn't have evidence-based treatments when I started 30 years ago. So my pressure, how I entered, was so different. You all are like moving into this rapid moving stream where 30 years ago, we tiptoed into the shallow end with a couple of clients, right? And you all are getting county paperwork and evidence-based treatments, and you're just dumped on. And so for a lot of folks, having this totally practical, how to do it simply course really makes a difference. The quiz should be live now. I will double check. The quiz should be live now, and hopefully Audrey, my assistant, if you could make sure those are published, that would be awesome. Let's see. Okay, good question. How close do the requirements of CACREP accreditation and master's program embody the basic tenets? So none, not CACREP, not COAMFD, not APA, none of them use this unifying framework. It is all of them, and all of the licensing exams are still very fragmented focus, and they're pitting all of these theories against each other. But for the love of God, are you going to really go and do therapy in the 21st century without some existential background, right? Without addressing the postmodern focus on social location and understanding how dominant discourses affect the individual. You shouldn't be doing therapy in the 21st century without as many of these theories as possible. But no, none of the, I have just integrated into my family therapy, Mastering Competencies in Family Therapy textbook. I have started integrating this into it as I redo theory and treatment planning and counseling and psychotherapy. Publisher just told me if there's another year delay, because they don't have money to do new editions right now. But that will be coming out also for counseling theories to help create books. And I am working on a book that will also hopefully just flip the script. And I think we need to learn this unifying framework first, and then layer on each of the theories and say, and yes, you get to do this one and that one and this one and this one and this one. Because I was one of those people when I read my theory textbook, I'm like, I want to do them all. And I guess I kind of just figured out how to do them all. It's kind of what I did. So Timothy, at the moment, no, okay, none of them have that. So Angie's asking, is it a good practice to use classmates? I'm in my last year mastering program to begin to build your professional network. Absolutely. Your classmates are definitely your start of your professional network. Absolutely. CE credits are available to students, and I highly recommend you get them, even if you don't need them. Of course, more licensing boards are requiring that associates get CEs, but even if you're a student, just keep every CE certificate you have, put it on your resume or curriculum vitae as it gets longer, so you have a record of the training, because that helps you when you're applying for jobs. It helps you when trying to get on insurance panels. Always get a CE certificate if it's offered. Okay. So someone's asking if they start with the monthly package, will they be allowed to access the other bonuses if we become able to pay it off? Absolutely. Absolutely. You got that. That I can make that happen. Okay. The quiz hopefully is going to be available today. Let's see. So how do we help? Patty's asking, how do we help people with various backgrounds access the unifying framework if they're not able to afford it? There is a free summary on YouTube of the unifying framework. It is in The best piece that is written up right now is in the Mastering Competencies in Family Therapy textbook. It is in that book. I do plan to write another just standalone professional book as well. But I think, you know, hopefully you can use some of the handouts and just even the concept. I think even if you can give your supervisees the general concept that there is more overlap here, you know, if you think about it, I wish I put the slide in, but you know, if you think about it, if you've ever heard the Indian kind of, I don't know, it's a teaching metaphor of, you know, if you blindfold 5 different people and you let each of them teach a different part of an elephant, you know, one is going to be describing it's like a tree when they're the one touching the leg. It's like a snake if you're touching the trunk, right? It's like a tail. I mean, if you're touching the tail, it's like rope, right? We're all touching, every theory is touching on the same exact human experience, right? And so all of our theories are touching on the same thing. We're using different words and different language, and even giving new clinicians the sense that this is different vocabulary and frameworks for assessing the exact same thing. We're all touching on the same elephant, which is the elephant in this room is our client's lived experience. And these are different lenses for doing that. And somehow I think just knowing that is a much more helpful way of thinking about it, rather than, oh my God, I've got to learn 20 different, totally unrelated theories. This is overwhelming. It's like, no, it's 20 different lenses on the same exact elephant. And I think just having that headspace is very helpful. You can take the 4 levels, or actually the 8 levels, the 4 levels that break into 8 levels, and just show how different theories using the chart you get here today, how those layer on to what they're seeing. And these theories are working on these levels, and these theories focus on these levels. Oh, obviously, most theories will have a way to touch on all 8 levels, but most of them are laser focused on a couple of those levels. And so I think just knowing that makes it less overwhelming. So hopefully that is a helpful thing. Okay, the quiz is not up yet. So hopefully, when was that? Oh, wow, quiz is still not up yet. Okay, we are working on that. And we will email. So if it's not up yet, I apologize about that. We will send an email up when it is ready to go, which should be shortly. So you can go and do that. And then how do we get the certificate? It will be emailed to you. And the email itself is the official certificate because it's got the timestamp from your email server, which is a very official way to put the date on it. So as soon as you do the quiz, you do the course evaluation, and then you will get a quiz. So awesome. Are there any other questions coming in? Okay. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. Hello. Oh, Cassandra. Hi. Awesome, awesome. Great to have you here. Very cool. So I taught you were back at CSUN in 2005, 2006. That was my second year, I think, at CSUN. That is so awesome. Thank you all. Thank you I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is inspiring. Oh, are there participant numbers for each supervision session? So there are 5 different supervision options that people go to, and you can come to as many or as few as you would like. Mahalo for those in Hawaii. Okay. Oh, the quiz still says September 18th. Yeah, I think I wanted to, so we will go ahead and take a look at that. So that is getting fixed. Do you have any suggestions for new therapists to not be so nervous when you start practicum? So the first, yeah, I will cite some research for you. You know, first of all, first year clinicians, clients generally like them more than seasoned clinician. Score, okay? Apparently you guys are really nice and they like you more. And B, if you can just be present with them, okay? Be there for them. You don't have to fix their issues. You need to keep them safe. So if you can be present and keep them safe, and then identify some important information to, you know, bring back to your supervisor to figure out what to do next time, that's all you need to do. But the most important thing is to be with them as a human being, you know, in this moment, listening to their suffering and their story, and just being fully present and respectful. Just do that. Just start there, because that is where, and never lose that. That is something that actually first-year therapists tend to do better than a lot of advanced folks or people who've been doing it longer. So if you look at the burnout rate, I guess maybe I never thought of that until today, but the burnout rate maybe is why as you get older, they like us less, right? But just be present, witness them and their humanity in that moment. And if you can do that, keep them safe, make sure the kids are safe, elders are safe, no one's hurting themselves or others, right? Keep the world safe, keep your clients safe, keep the kids of the world safe and the elders safe, right? Dependent adults, keep everyone safe. Be human, touch their humanity, let your humanity be there. Notice the important things that might relate to diagnosis, and bring it all back to your supervisor who will help you. That's all you need to do. And I will tell you, the folks who go through my Therapy That Works level 1 course, they're like, oh my God. It's like you start off with 5 years experience. It really makes a difference. And also I've heard from folks who are going, from their grad program to be an associate, where all of a sudden you go from seeing 5 clients a week to seeing 30 clients per week. Quickly getting skilled is really important at that juncture as well. But like I said, I love taking my, people who've been doing this for 20, 30 years who leave feeling like, oh my God, everything synthesizes. And that's what I find so fascinating. I was wondering at first, do I create a course for, beginners versus advanced? But it really all comes together. It's very, very magical. Yes, the slides will be posted, and we'll email you when they are posted as well. Yeah, this course is typically only offered twice per year. I don't know if it's always going to be in this format, because this is a very labor-intensive way for me to teach it, but some version of it should be available in the future. I can just guarantee that this is the one where you're going to have at least 20 hours live with me personally. So if you're wanting to take it, this is a good time to take it for sure. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. Wow, Patrick from Camarillo. Awesome, awesome. Oh, Father Camarillo. Maybe it's Patrick Father Camarillo. I don't know if that's the last name. Awesome, awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Awesome. Yep. Yes. And, in terms of being eclectic, and, for those who work eclectically or integrated, having a coherent framework, I think, really is liberating and declutters the mind, if that makes sense. And I think that's one of the nice things that people, this is a hard one to say, is when you learn a unifying framework, it declutters your mind. And that's why the stress level goes down, especially for those people who've been working for many, many years. It's like, wow, it's like suddenly you sit there and they're just like, if you think of your CPU and how much, of your computer memory you're using, it's like you can sit down and just use 20% of your bandwidth and you can do an amazing job. Or before you were using 80% of your bandwidth to like sort through everything. This just helps you use a lot less bandwidth. The most relaxing thing I do practically all week is see clients and put the things through that 4-level assessment. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Woohoo! Okay, JT just signed up. Mahalo. Awesome, awesome. So fellow I am Hawaiian MFT number 722. So great to have you there. And I just love being able to say aloha, mahalo, and greet my Hawaiian colleagues, because they are Akane, woohoo! Awesome. Akane, she was one of my former students. She's loving licensed life. Excellent. I love it, love it. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of yourself. Awesome. So, well, okay. I'm just scrolling here. Looks like we need to get the quiz didn't quite get set up correctly. That will be taken care of within the hour. Handouts will be up within the hour. I'm learning how to do handouts from Canva. I've switched over to Canva from PowerPoint. And there's certain things that just go so much better on PowerPoint than Canva. As you saw with my clicking through today, I apologize about that. Okay. Awesome, awesome. So yeah, the certificates will be emailed to you. And so we are getting that quiz all straightened out. Awesome. Oh, Linda's saying she recommends the course to my trainees. I love it. You're in Westlake. Gosh, next time you can come over. Yes, yeah. Linda worked with it, yeah, the neuroendocrine, because I didn't even talk about that, because I mean, the whole endocrine system is another part of that 25% of health issues that really boil down to a physical issue. Linda has been a leader in the neuroendocrine disorders. So yes, absolutely. And that's a huge, I don't know, Linda, if you're still here, I don't know, you know, so endocrinologists can sometimes be one of the referrals as well. It is a very complex landscape. Awesome. So great to have you here. Oh, Megan's asking, what is the max number of students? It is typically around 50 is where we max out the course. So we're more than half full already because there was an early bird special. So if you're wanting to join, please go ahead and join. You know, and Patty, how to help supervisees with this framework who come from different backgrounds? You know, absolutely. So this, I mean, that's what's beautiful. This framework works across disciplines. I have social workers, counselors, and MFTs from around the globe. It's beautiful, around the globe in this course. And so what's nice is this framework allows all of us to use the same jargon, which is very simple jargon. I try to use as little jargon as possible. Behavior, cognition, emotions. We talk about identities, social locations, social discourses. And so it allows us all to come together to talk across and see that we're doing the same work. We're all working with the same elephant in the middle of the room, right? We're doing the same thing, and allows us to do that in a respectful way, in a kind way, and to really be on the same team. Because that is something, especially we have a lot of folks from Hawaii here. The Hawaiians have done that better than any place I've seen on the planet in terms of work together as mental health professionals. And so it is, yes, so you being able to be respectful across all of those disciplines, each one has a different set of strengths that they bring to the work of mental health, and using, we need it all, man. It is so hard to do therapy in this global context. And so, yes, I want all the wisdom from all of my colleagues out there that I can find: endocrinologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors, social workers, MFTs, all the different theoretical approaches. I'll take it all, because what we're doing is very hard work. Oh, someone's asking, what if your students can't afford it? Can a supervisor? Yes, I have had supervisors take the course and use the methods in the course and bring it to their supervisees. I've definitely had supervisors use, and it just transforms their supervision. And they're like, oh my God, this is making me, I didn't come here to be a better supervisor, but I'm so much better at supervising now, because it's all so simple. So what used to take 80% of your brain power is going to take 20% of your brain power. And you can help your students using all different theory, if they want to use different theoretical approaches, because that's become a nightmare for a lot of supervisors. My students coming in and they want to use this method I've never heard of. It's pretty intimidating as a supervisor, having 500 theories out there, right? Because there's the 20 or so on the licensing exam, but there are 500 total. And your students come in and you're like, and the supervisors find that it is super helpful, because now they can really respond better to a lot of different approaches, rather than saying, I don't know that, I can't supervise you in that. You're like, oh, I've got this framework, I can probably figure it out. It's pretty awesome feeling as a supervisor, Patty, I'll tell you that. Oh, so the quiz, I think there were some technical issues with the quiz, and we will email you when the quiz is working properly. Okay, sorry about that, Sally Ann. Oh. So we will send out an email that will tell you, how to get the quiz up. And once it's up and operational, there was something wonky with it. So sorry about that. So within the hour, the quiz should be up. Okay, let's check out some of the new messages. Oh, Tiffany. Oh, Tiffany's a supervisor, and she's using she's gone through the program, both level 1 and 2, and she has is using with her interns. So awesome, Tiffany. And I'm assuming it helps you supervise your students, whether they're social, or especially when you become a supervisor of social workers, counselors, MFTs, psychologists, everyone together. You're like, everyone's got all this different jargon, right? And so as a supervisor, it's super challenging, because they'll put, 3 different, folks from 3 different disciplines, everyone's speaking a different language. I just can't even tell you how done I am with juggling 20 different theories all the time, or 50 different theories really, because I do both counseling and MFT work. That we are wearing, this is why we're burned out and stressed out, right? This is why we are, one of the many reasons why we are burned and stressed out. We have created a very clunky system for ourselves to use. So yes, awesome, awesome. Yeah, so the quiz is going to be coming out. Okay, awesome, awesome. Okay. Tiffany, you can email me your question about how to find old CEs from other courses. I expect there will be a spring cohort. There will be a waiting list if you want to get into the spring cohort as well. Woohoo! Okay, License Life. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Oh, so Wendy was asking what kind of certificate. You get 2 certificates. You get your classic CE certificate with therapy for the therapy that works, level 1 course, the master course. You get a 45. You actually get 2 CE certificates. We do one for the pre-recorded because that's really easy and automated. You can have total control over that. And then we do one for the live sessions that we have to kind of hand do. And then you also get a wall certificate, because there is a level 1, there is a level 2, there is a certification, and there is a website where we host the folks who have gone through the 2 programs. Awesome, awesome. Okay, Susie, if you were on my mailing list, so if you get emails from me a couple times, 2-3 times a month, you're on my mailing list. I know some people found me from Instagram here, but if you're on my mailing list, once I finished drafting, wow, my problem is when I started writing so Kevin's done all of the analysis, which goes on for like 10 or more pages. I started writing the discussion because I was going to write this out, and then we have a drafted lit review, but I wanted to add to it. Our paper's just way too long right now, so now I got to figure out what I'm going to do with this beast. maybe we have 2 papers, I'm not sure, but I am working on it. Once we finalize it and start submitting it, I will do a formal presentation like this that will be free on the licensing exam to keep everyone up to date. I am working with the MFT boards. So that's the California Board of Behavioral Sciences. So if you're in California as an LPC or social worker, their social work board has published theirs. The MFT board has a group working on it, and so does the counseling board. And I believe APA also has a task force, most of them have appointed, to look at age and racial disparities in pass rates. So we will get that information out. I know in California, I felt like, and AMFT is also contacted. So I am working with the MFT boards on our particular set of research. I know ACA is working, NASW is ahead of all of us. And I'm pretty sure Psych's going to get involved here too. And so I've been very happy to see at least California. I was shocked because if you know anything about licensing boards, they're very slow to change. And so there's good news around trying to make some changes sooner. And so my recommendations are like how to make change in the next 12 months. Let's not wait. Let's not put a task force together for 5 years or do a research study for another 10 years to change the exams. We need to move fast. I'm really working on some very quick, easy changes to address these disparities. But it's funny because, that's like this, to me, the licensing world is this old school world. It's like, oh, for the love of God, 16 to 20 theories. So one of my recommendations is cut the number of theories in half. But what would the licensing exams be like if we just had a unifying framework and that was the focus, and do we understand the basic principles of human psychology and the basic principles of how to create change using the talking cure? Like, this could be so easy. I mean, it really, we have made it so hard to do this work well. And sometimes I think about, Freud and Jung sitting on that couch, and Adler in Freud's living room. And what if they had just figured out how to work together, and we learned you can do this and that and this and that, and we created it unified from the beginning. So yeah, the licensing exams are a mess. I think the way we have made this very work hard to do for ourselves. We made licensing unnecessarily hard. What I call the fragmentation, the divisiveness, we are wearing ourselves out. We are burning ourselves out, and it is not good for anyone. So awesome. Okay. So thank you all very, very much. I am so glad you were here. And I'm going to just see if there are any other comments I can see. Oh wait. Okay, I see there was a question here from Lena. I hope that got answered. Oh yeah, I think Linda did. Oh, I think it was a typo. Okay. So there's a comment here. Yes. Okay, so yeah, talking about just this whole thing about having our biases and how to work with them. It's a very complex thing, and truly being curious and open and, learning from our clients. It's so powerful. And if that's how we learn how to do that, what I call collaborative connecting, that point number 2, it really is transformational. Awesome. Anne is saying that the whole thing about self-care, it's like that whole discourse is unfortunately taken, I agree with you, Anne, it's kind of taken an unfortunate turn, and what people take to be self-care, manicures and pedicures are what it is a level of self-care, but I think the work you need to do, and I think, Anne, we're resonating on the same thing here. It's like, it's more than mani-pedis that we need to do. So awesome. Do I have a class on provider burnout, Tiffany? Trying to think. I have one imposter syndrome is what I have. And I feel like therapy that works really helps with that. And you've been through it. So I think also, it's an interesting idea for a course. So maybe I'll put that on my to-do list. I do have a long to-do list, but that is a good idea, because burnout is very high. When 40% of professionals, or nearly 37% of professionals say they're planning to leave in the next 5 years, that was jaw-dropping even for me, because that does not bode well for humanity and our role to help humanity here. So, okay. Awesome. Well, thank you all for spending time with me today. I hope you feel inspired. And so here, yeah. Someone is saying here they left because of burnout and then came back a year later. Okay, well, that's good, but we need to not burn you out. Okay, we need to not burn each other out. Because it is, we've just made this so complex. And those of you in my Laugh Your Way to Licensure class, I get angry when I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to tell you that you need to study this, but this is what it is, right? Oh my goodness. Awesome. Okay, so Awida is saying, I'm looking forward to the next phase of learning, focusing on unification. Yes. Yay. Oh, wow. Yay. I am thrilled if you are joining. It's exciting. We already have an amazing cohort getting started. It is truly one of the most joyful things I do, we all come here, we want our life to have purpose and to feel like, that transforming the field so that, we as mental health professionals are able to help more people more quickly, while also making our jobs easier. It's like the ultimate win-win. And I think inadvertently our field has created a super complex way of doing this work. And it's just so exciting to be able to finally put together a system for making it easier for both us and everyone else. Woohoo! Well, I just signed up. Woohoo! I love it. Oh, Angie is wanting some examples of self-care for our profession. I think we need to have a very robust lifestyle plan for taking care of ourselves. So I'll give you some of the examples in my own life. I work out every day. And when I do so, honest to God, I'm listening to guided meditations because I am a single mom. I don't have a lot of time. I work a lot of different jobs. So I do a guided meditation while I'm running in nature. I walk, let's be real, but do a morning run, and I'm mindfully experiencing nature. I am listening to uplifting, meditations or uplifting information of some kind. And I start my day, I literally, and I have consciously done this, I infuse hope into my psyche every day. I've read Rumi poetry, I read inspirational things. I only listen to upbeat music that gives me hope for humanity. I only watch movies that are upbeat and give me hope for humanity. I can't do my work if I allow myself to be bombarded with messages of hopelessness and despair, and that doesn't see the best in humanity. So one of the things I consciously do as a practice, whether it's my music, my movies, how I spend my morning, I infuse in mindfulness throughout my day. And I read the news probably a little too much, but because I need to know what's going on to help my clients. I think that is important. I haven't always as much as I've done in the last 10 years because of what the world has become. But I make sure I counterbalance that by not keeping multiple practices in my day where I feel hope for humanity. I see a light for humanity. I try to cultivate the light in myself to be light for others. And that is how I've been doing this work for 30 years and I still love it. Okay. And so self-care is about how do you organize your whole life? Like, I don't go on things like, social media. Really do not try not to go on too much because I don't find it lifts me up unless I can. And if for social media, I would only follow people who are uplifting and positive because we do see and hear a lot of darkness, and we cannot minimize that. And we need to be able to be emotionally, physically, and spiritually present as we work with clients going through horrific trauma and loss like we've just never seen as what's happening in the last few months. So I hope that is helpful. Woohoo! Yes, and I do read the news. I keep up with it, but I'm very careful of how I use it, and I read it only on my phone because it's small. I do not listen to the news. It's too emotionally overwhelming to my system, but I read it. And I really am, and I read it critically, and I notice how, I just even study the news and how they are sparking everyone's stress response with their headlines. It's like how they get us to read. And so very consciously looking at what comes into my mind and my soul, and cultivating hope so that I can be there for people in their darkest moments, fully for them in all ways, as being fully human. So hopefully that helps, Angie. So excited to see so many of you have joined. And until next time, I wish you all well. Be well, take good care of yourselves. If there's one message I hope you got, you need to take care of yourself, mind, body, spirit, in all ways, 360, take care of yourselves so that we can be there for our communities, for the globe at this time in history. So be well, everyone, and take care.